but I felt like I wanted to do something bigger, and then I got my MBA degree. Now,
Yeah.
I was hoping with that branding, like everybody knows I got an MBA, they'll recognize it and like give me like the highest promotion, biggest salary. Doesn't happen.
Martians landed.
Yes.
Wearing Prada suits.
Yes.
Drinking Henry's seltzer.
Yes.
Chewing juicy fruit.
Yes, and?
Your branding here.
Yes, brand.
Your message here.
Yes, and?
A verse about
Yes.
your product here.
Yes.
I'm Hersh Rephun.
Yes, and?
I'm a message therapist.
Yes.
And I have a podcast.
Yes, brand.
That's right, that's it.
Yes.
We'll help you fix the world.
Yes.
Or your bottom line.
All right.
Your bottom line.
Get it. I get it. Welcome to the Yes Brand Podcast.
In the hot seat today on Yes Brand is Vladimir Baronov. Vladimir has traversed many areas of concentration, from fintech to wealth tech, space tech, helping startups. He's done his own startup work, 20 years in these fields, and now brings his expertise to founders, tech innovators, basically helping other people learn from his trial and error, learn from his successes, and learn how to problem solve as he has learned over his career. He recently became an entrepreneur in residence at Cornell University. So welcome, Vladimir.
Thank you, Hersh. And that was a great introduction. Couldn't have done it better myself.
My pleasure. Yeah, glad to have you. So tell us a little bit about your adventures. I know aerospace was a love of yours, but you started out in the financial sector, wealth sector. Tell us a little bit about how you got started in business to begin with.
Yeah. So my journey is probably like a lot of others who might be listening to podcasts. Started as an individual contributor. I was an engineer helping build reconciliation and trading systems on Wall Street for 4 different large banks. Lots of complex data, lots of storage optimization, lots of algorithmic optimization. But I felt like I wanted to do something bigger, and then I got my MBA degree. Now, I was hoping with that branding, like everybody knows I got an MBA, they'll recognize it and like give me like the highest promotion, biggest salary. Doesn't happen.
Right.
Like all our titles and certifications do nothing for us unless we actively promote it in a way that is actually meaningful.
Yeah, very good point. Very good point. And so continue. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, of course. And as part of the MBA, I was exposed to interesting ways of how to do entrepreneurship in a structured way. And the reason I'm saying structured is like relying on a framework that gets you more likely to be a successful venture versus the unstructured ways that I've used before by just using my own mind. And it's almost like learning physics without textbook. And that ended up lending me into a wealth management startup, which I helped grow. And eventually it was sold to a larger financial institution of about 7 years. So it's been a great journey there as far as like scaling and growing. But then, as I mentioned, like I went for the passion and I switched over into aerospace industry and grew another startup there, this time in the world of satellites. But then I was also started thinking like, what are the more wider ways I can explore my passion and also make the biggest impact I can? And I found that executive coaching, which I practice right now for founders and other technology executives, is a way to do that. Like I could be the multiplier for all those who need help to work through their personal growth or through their business growth and be the multiplier for the industry, which I'm passionate about.
And what are some of the differences in these roles? When you're an executive coach, how is it different for you than when you were kind of on the front line of a startup?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think this is where you have to kind of start disconnecting. Okay, let me start a different way. When you're in a company, you can always hide behind the company's brand and say, I am part of X, and have X do whatever it does. have X fail. Well, X, like, not like Twitter, but just that
Yeah,
letter is now taken. So let's use letter Z.
right.
Or letter Y. So if the company does something, not necessarily reflects poorly on you, or perhaps if you need to express the company's brand, is not necessarily your personal brand. But when I had to switch over to coaching, I realized that because I'm the one who's providing the service, I'm the one who's there with the client, I'm the one who is advertising me, I have to present myself, which kind of was an uncomfortable journey. Uncomfortable, not because I'm not willing to share. My wife shares that, so tells me that I overshare all the time. It's more about how do I share things in a way that other people perceive it as a product, as a service, and that was a journey for me. So I think I'm getting better to doing that, but initially it was very difficult compared to being an executive.
So in a way, you're saying that being an executive allowed you a little bit of room to step back from the company and the corporate brand. And here now, as an executive coach, it's all you. It's all
Exactly.
your brand. Every piece of advice you give, every step that you take with a client.
Yeah.
So now that you're in the business of providing information and insight, what are some misconceptions that a lot of people have about growth?
Growth. And we'll say it in the context of coaching, because coaching right now is itself in a growth mode,
Yeah.
still being recognized as an approach and technique. And sometimes people assume it's actually punitive, like, people are being punished by being assigned coach.
Yeah.
A good counter argument for that is actually, for most executives out there, once they reach the pinnacle in their own kind of vertical, be that a CFO, be that COO, be that CAO, CIO, whoever it is, they're actually on the pinnacle or on the barrier between themselves and the company, and usually have nobody else to talk to about the decisions that they're making. So it's almost like they're making decisions in the vacuum of their own heads. And I'm not saying they're not experienced. There's always a good idea to talk to somebody else who at least knows how to process somebody else's context, and perhaps ask them question of clarity that will help them gain some information of edge over somebody who's not talking to another person. A coach is a contextual co-processor of your own thinking, and listens to you when you verbalize things and creates a structure of information and kind of feeds it back to you. Now, that's one of the misconceptions, right? So I mentioned the one where coach is being punitive. Another that is sort of like this woo-woo, new agey situation where you talk about your feelings. And the answer is maybe, mostly because coaching itself right now is not very well defined, and every coach defines it for themselves. And then, yes, there are well-being health coach, and they're absolutely great ones, but there are also the ones who just call themselves coaches, and they introduce some sort of practices which are not necessarily helping anybody. So there is some interesting people in the field who we try to differentiate ourselves from by providing more concrete services and advice.
And how do you, Vladimir, differentiate yourself as a coach from being a consultant?
That's a great question. So coach is somebody who asks you a lot of questions. Consultants who provides you a lot of answers. So consultant is not necessarily the one who will be asking you as many questions as possible to create a context. They'll be answering in detail the question or a task that you put together for them to resolve and solve or provide options and solutions for. A coach, on the other hand, would answer a question with another question saying, what do you think? What other options available for the problem which you just mentioned? In a way, kind of activating your own mind to provide your own solutions, because only you know your own context. And while over time coach can learn your context, we're definitely not an expert on you. We're just there to help you navigate that situation.
That's really interesting, because I find, in doing message therapy, working with clients on their message, I didn't set out to become a coach, but I set out to be a consultant, in which case, to your point, I would provide answers. But what I realize and what I'm accepting now more and more in the process of this therapy, which involves a lot of asking questions, a lot of listening to them give their answers and then asking follow-up questions. And it's funny that you demonstrated that difference, because I'm both, I guess, in my case.
Yes.
And in some cases you are doing both. You're providing answers, but you know what questions to ask. I think that's what you've learned in your experience, is you've learned what questions do I need to ask this client. Now, does it, for you, your experiences in all of these different areas of tech, are your clients always in some technical field?
Many times they are, but I do talk to clients who are just talk to me who are from outside, and this is actually sometimes an advantage and a disadvantage. Advantage is that because I can offer questions that I ask in context of my industry to people outside of my industry, and they could be as eye-opening as anybody else in that industry, because they come completely out of context and create kind of new thought patterns that might not have been there before. Like you probably know, the greatest discoveries of our times are when one science practitioner from one vertical switches to another and asks the questions, why are you guys doing this way? Why don't we try it this way instead of how we've done it at this different company? So you have kind of cross-pollination of ideas or cross-pollination of questions. The negative of that is that I cannot market it, because if I market it, then I confuse my brand with what I'm doing, and then all of a sudden I become a journalist. And in your probably podcast, you covered it multiple times. Really hard to sell yourself as a journalist, because if you're selling everything, then you're selling nothing.
Yeah, very, very true. I mean, niching down is super important. It's very important. That's where I niched to personal brands, to not working with corporate brands anymore. And a lot of times my clients will have both, and I will have something to offer on the corporate side, but mostly I will focus on the personal side. So it mostly will have to do with differentiating and separating out the personal brand from the corporate brand. And I think that you're right to say, well, here's my experience, here's who I am, here's what I know, but be willing to learn new things, listen to new conversations. And speaking of which, when you mentioned putting yourself on the line, putting your own personal brand on the line, how have you gone about getting your name out there? How have you gone about getting your brand out?
Absolutely. I think we're all start out as novices, because it's not marketing something we learn in high school or, on our own. I have started obviously with a website, and you build a website, put some information on there which you think is important, and then you wait for the clients to come, and nobody comes, and then you start questioning yourself, what am I doing wrong? And then eventually, it hits you that it's not about you, it's about them. And then you try to figure out like the typical marketing journey, like who are your customer personas, who are your client personas, like what are they looking for, what kind of outcomes they're looking for, how can you put your message in a way that it resonates with what they need. That's where kind of started my whole branding story, is like, how can I position my experience in a way that addresses needs, not my experience, not to showcase my experience, but to showcase how can I bring the needs to the outcomes that my customers and my clients desire.
So how did you correct that? What changes did you make to your website and so forth?
I think it's in the words. It's in the power of words. It's power of prioritization of pictures and services and offerings. And some of the things which are important, but the brand is proof, social proof, right? It's the testimonials, it's the companies you work with, it's your own personal picture. Because when you talk about coaching, you are interacting with a person, so you kind of want to see what they look like, because we're more likely to create rapport when we know how somebody looks like versus a bland, gray website. Some inspiration here and there, and also explanation of different ideas. I put blog posts quite regularly on different subjects that I coach. So there is an understanding that there is some expertise or experience behind what I produce. But also additionally, like add resources that could be relevant to anybody who's going on a coaching journey. And perhaps if they're not ready yet, or perhaps they're not in a position to afford my services, they can at least use some resources for their own self-improvement.
Yeah, I mean, from the way you're speaking, you're definitely putting them first and their needs first, but you're also recognizing that it's important for them to connect with you. One of the things that's interesting is we're in the midst of this coaching kind of boom that is clearly a post-COVID reaction to the fact that a lot of people want to change what they're doing, and by needing to change what they're doing, they can benefit from having a coach. And like you've said, it's not a weakness to need a coach or benefit from a coach. It's a step in the right direction. It's the way that I look at therapy, whether it's, physical therapy, psychotherapy, or message therapy. It doesn't matter. You're still acknowledging that you can get healthier and benefit from someone else's coaching and working with you. But does that also mean that there's a lot more competition for you out there? And if so, how do you rise above that even more so?
Absolutely. And what is interesting about coaching is the relationship is very personal. So when it comes to like just worldwide competition, it's really, really difficult just because of the picture or description of the services. With really good marketing, it's really difficult. The best way to do it is by start coaching somebody when you meet them. So it's kind of like you have a catch-22 situation. How do you meet somebody, start coaching them before they know about your services? In-person one-on-one meetings or like conferences where a person talks about their situation or they talk about their company, and you just stand there and ask questions. And this is a very interesting experience for many of us, probably, who are just used to kind of chit-chatting, asking questions, giving answers, providing consulting. Just stand there and ask questions. And you wait until the time when you ask a question and the person pauses and says, "It's a really good question. I don't know. Let me think about it." And another 2 minutes go by. And you're like, "This is really good. What else do you think?" And you ask another question instead of giving them a suggestion. And they're like, "Oh, I think I get what the coaching is now." So in combination of just selling yourself, you're also selling the art of coaching. Because I mentioned before, like a lot of people are not yet familiar with what the power of coaching can do for them. But also you're the one as the provider creates a trust and rapport with your prospective client. And thus you kind of coach them before you have them as a client. Some of them would be very interested. You know what? I see what you did here. Do you mind if we continue our conversation? And some of them would not. But that kind of creates a prospect or a lead in those conversations. Now, there are other ways you can do that online by offering complimentary coaching sessions or like surveys or asking for people for a favor, for introduction, or by offering a free piece of content, creating other lead magnets, which create additional traction. But as a coach, your goal is to get to the place where you can start coaching as soon as possible before you even learn about the potential of the client.
Yeah, I think that when you can get them to the point where they ask you what you do, you've won quite a bit. Because if you're waiting for them to stop talking so that you can say who you are and what you do and how you could maybe be of help, then you've already lost. You like you say, you have to have a curiosity about, what are they doing? What makes them tick? What are they facing? And then those follow-up questions. You're so right. I hope that, for listeners out there that are, even in any business that they are in, to learn that listening technique is so important. Listen and ask. And that's what people mean when they say it's not about you. Doesn't mean that it's not going to come back to you and that you're all of your accreditations and all of your accomplishments and your MBA and everything that you've done are all going to come in handy, but you're not needing to roll it out like a CV in front of them. Yeah. That will come later.
It kind of goes back to adage, show, don't tell.
Yeah. Yeah. Show, don't tell. Solve the problem. And tell me if this is true. Have you noticed, you know, when you're working with clients that are further along in their career on a, just in terms of, having gotten some stuff under their belt, and now they're coming to you for help with the next level, possibly. Um, they have probably learned that as well, that it's not so much about who we each are once we get along. What they really want is solve the problem. Can you solve this problem? I have this problem. And then, and then you go from there.
It is true when let's say they come for consulting, but I think when people seek for coaching, it's more like, I'm not sure what to choose between these three options. And they have no trusted other person they can go to who they can share all the information and kind of like bounce ideas off, but without me providing the input. It's more, they probably already know the right answer, but they need to talk through their options and process through their options in order to understand for them better what is better. And we lie to ourselves all the time as individuals because it's all neatly organized in our heads. We're the smartest, people on earth because that's how we feel. I'm not saying we are, but that's how we feel every day.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'd probably be depressed. But once we start talking things out and putting them on paper in front of another person, it's really easy for another person out of the context or for a professional coach to see what might be missing and ask, hey, you mentioned this is in the shape of triangle, but this is in the shape of a square. Why is the difference between those two shapes? And then they realign and make both of them as squares. And then you're trying to see if one of those options for them is the right one, or if maybe there's additional options that they haven't considered.
Yeah.
A very powerful coaching question. Sometimes you ask, what comes to mind about these options? But the next powerful question is, what else? What else? What else? You can ask that what else question up to 5-10 times, and you generate new options, and the person will be surprised that they are even there. And all executives use a lot of mental shortcuts to think about things less, just because they were trying to be as effective as possible. And by creating room for them to think more and deeply in the issues that they're interested about, creates powerful possibilities for their outcomes.
Yeah. And how long are the engagements usually with your clients?
That's a good question. Some of my clients I've had for about over a year. Some engagement are just couple sessions, like maybe 2 or 3. It varies. For the executives on regular kind of retention, it's 6 to 12 months. For one-off kind of coaching, where let's say you're having an issue with a coworker, you're trying to like execute a quick plan, it's probably 3 months, 2 to 3 months.
Another thing that comes up a lot for coaches and consultants is scale. Have you thought about that or worked through that notion of scale, of how to grow? You've obviously experienced growth. You know what growth
Yes.
is all about in a startup. Now, as an executive coach, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it depends on individual priorities. I think to me, coaching is more of a lifestyle kind of business in a way that I want to make my earning. I want to make impact. But I think if you grow beyond a certain scale as an individual coach, you lose that individual impact that you can make in your sessions. Yes, I know some coaches have created their own coaching schools and they have trained others, but it no longer, I feel, at least me for now, gives me that impact feeling that I'm giving when I'm conducting my own sessions. For others, though, let's say next step beyond that would be creating your own classes, creating your own school, hiring other coaches, creating frameworks that they can follow and to scale that advice or scale that coaching practice. And I think it depends, again, to the mind of the practitioner of what impact and what scale they want to grow at.
Yeah. Well, I would like you to share, how people can find you. It'll be in show notes, of course, but how people can find you. But then also maybe a closing thought about AI in this age of, impersonality versus personalization, because I know how important the one-on-one is to you. So maybe close with a thought about that, if you would.
Yeah, that's a big topic. I think everybody has opinions on that if you really ask them. I'm looking forward for AI helping us understand the vast majority of data that is out there. I also hope AI will bring answers to those people who feel uncomfortable talking to practitioners like myself or therapists, and perhaps it brings them answers in confidential topics that currently they're not able to do. But I also hope that AI does not remove the individual personal impact that we can make on each other and reduce the quality of the relationship.
And finally, where can people find you when they're looking for you, Vladimir?
Absolutely. So you can find me on LinkedIn under Vladimir Baronov, or my website, humaninterfaces.co/podcast, and you can schedule a complimentary session of coaching, and hopefully you will enjoy it.
All right.
If you liked the show,
Yes, and
it worked for you,
yes, that.
subscribe and leave a
Yes, friend.
5-star review.
Yes, friend.
Tell all your friends.
Yes, friend.
Get your branding here.
Yes, friend.
Get your branding here.
Yes, friend.
Did I make it clear?
Yes, friend.
Get your branding on
Yes.
before they're gone.
Yes.